Ara had always thought that some doors were meant to stay shut, but standing in the dusty attic of her grandmother's old fancy house, staring at a pretty music box she'd never seen before, she felt something moving in her chest. A mix of wonder and a strange feeling of wanting something. The music box sat alone on a small table, surrounded by forgotten things covered in white sheets. Its outside was detailed, carved with twisting roses and thorns, and even with the dust on everything else in the attic, this thing seemed not touched by time. Something about it pulled her, like it had been waiting many years just for this moment. Sarah reached out slowly, her fingers shaking as they got close to the fancy part. The metal felt warm under her touch, almost alive. Without thinking, she held the small golden key sticking out from its side and turned it. The tune that came out was strangely beautiful, a dance song she'd never heard before, yet it felt so known as the tiny clay figures inside started to move. Sarah felt the world around her change. The dusty attic seemed to disappear, replaced by something that shouldn't have been possible. She was no longer alone. A man stood in front of her, as real as her own heartbeat, his dark eyes locked on hers with a strength that made her breath stop. He was dressed in clothes from another time, a deep blue vest over a white shirt, his dark hair a bit messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. But it wasn't how he looked that made her heart race. It was the way he looked at her, as if he'd been looking for her his whole life. "You found it," he whispered, his voice with a British sound mixed with amazement and something deeper, maybe relief or thanks after all these years. "You finally found it." Sarah wanted to step back to ask what was going on, but something kept her there. Maybe it was how his eyes seemed to hold whole talks, or the fact that even with how impossible this was, she felt safer with him there than she had in months. "I don't understand," she managed to say, her voice just above a whisper. "Who are you? How are you here?" He took a step closer, his moves careful, like he was afraid she might vanish. "My name is Thomas, and I've been stuck in that music box for longer than I want to remember, waiting for someone like you, someone like me." Sarah's smart mind yelled that this couldn't be real, but her heart was singing a different song, someone who could hear the music the way it was meant to be heard. Thomas said softly, "Someone whose heart was open enough to set me free," as if to show his words. The tune from the music box swirled around them, seen now as golden threads of light that danced through the air. Sarah watched in wonder as the threads made patterns around them, both linking them in ways she couldn't start to get. "This is impossible," she breathed. But even as she said it, she found herself taking a step toward him. Many impossible things become possible when the heart is part of it. Thomas replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "But I get if you're scared. This is not the world, you know." Sarah thought about her world, the one she'd left behind when she climbed those attic stairs. A world where she'd spent the last 2 years rebuilding herself after David had left, saying she was too quiet, too normal for his big dream life. A world where she'd told herself that love, like in fairy tales, just didn't happen for people like her. "I should be scared," she admitted, surprised by her own truth. "But I'm not should that worry me?" Thomas's smile was gentle, changing his whole face. "It should make you feel sure. Fear often keeps us from the very things our souls need most." He held out his hand toward her, palm up, an invite, not a push. "Would you like to know why I was trapped? Would you like to hear my story?" Sarah looked at his open hand, then back at his face. Every smart thought told her to leave, to close the music box and forget this ever happened. But her heart was already reaching for him. She put her hand in his, gasping softly at the warmth of his touch. The link was fast and deep, as if they'd done this 1,000 times before in dreams she'd forgotten when waking. "Tell me," she said, Thomas's fingers laced with hers, and suddenly the attic around them changed fully. They stood in a fancy ballroom, big lights casting warm glow over couples dancing in fancy dresses and coats. The music box's tune played louder, now filled with the richness of a full band. "This was my world," Thomas said, his voice heavy with memory. "England, 1847. I was a music maker, spending my days creating tunes that I hoped would touch people's hearts. Sarah watched the dancers twirl around them, noticed how some of them looked at Thomas with respect. And liking you were successful in some ways, he agreed, but success meant nothing without love. I had written lots of pieces about romance, about the kind of link that changes two people into something bigger than themselves, yet I had never felt it myself. A beautiful woman in a green dress came toward them in the vision. Her smile bright and practiced, she held out her hand toward Thomas, but Sarah saw how his face stayed politely far. Lady Margaret Thomas said quietly for Sarah's help she was everything society said I should want: beautiful, rich, skilled. She was also everything I didn't need. What did you need? Sarah asked, though part of her thought she already knew the answer. Someone who understood that music isn't just sound, it's feeling. Made real, someone who could hear the stories I was trying to tell in every note. His hold on her hand tightened a bit. Someone like you. The ballroom scene changed, showing Thomas alone in a room lit by candles, bent over sheets of music, his hair falling into his eyes as he worked fast on a tune. I became fixed. He continued, his voice getting darker. Fixed on creating the perfect piece of music that would somehow call to my other half wherever she might be. I believed that if I could just find the right mix of notes, the right beat, she would hear it and find me. Sarah felt a chill go down her back. The music box, he said. I poured everything I had into that tune. Every hope, every dream, every lonely night, wondering if true love was just a story I'd been silly enough to believe in. And when I finished it, the vision changed again, showing Thomas giving the music sheets to a maker, an old man with wise eyes and skilled hands. I had it made by someone who knew magic better than most. He warned me that such strong feeling mixed with such desperate want could have surprises. But I didn't listen. What happened? Thomas's jaw tightened with old hurt. Lady Margaret had grown tired of my polite nuzz. She came to me one evening, mad and shamed, demanding to know why I kept saying no to her moves when I told her I was waiting for true love. She laughed. The scene played out before them like a sad play. Lady Margaret, her face twisted with anger, grabbed the music box from Thomas's desk and wound it hard. She said if I wanted to wait for true love, I could wait forever. Thomas's voice was barely heard as the music played. I felt myself being pulled into it, becoming part of it. The last thing I remember from that night was her throwing the music box into a trunk and having it sent away. Sarah's heart hurt for him. How long? 177 years. Thomas said simply, until today, until you. The ballroom faded away, leaving them back in the attic. But everything had changed. The space was brighter, now warmer, as if Thomas's being there had breathed life into it. But why me? Sarah asked, though she was starting to think the answer went deeper than anything either of them could fully explain. Because you hear the music the way I meant it to be heard, Thomas said, lifting their joined hands to rest against his chest. Because when you listen, you don't just hear notes, you hear the story they're telling, the longing, the hope, the belief that somewhere out there is someone who will understand your heart completely. Sarah felt tears in her eyes, because he was right. Music had always been her safe place, her escape from a world that often felt too hard and real for the dreams she carried. Even David had made fun of her for the way she could lose herself in a beautiful song, or find meaning in words that others thought were just fun. I thought I wasn't brave enough, The kind of love you write about in songs, she admitted. My ex-fiancé said I lived too much in dreams, that real love was about giving in and settling for what was practical. Thomas's free hand came up to hold her cheek, his touch very gentle. He was wrong. Real love is about finding someone who makes your dreams feel possible. The truth of his words rang in her chest like the perfect note held just long enough to make her soul shake in tune. But real life came in like a wrong note. Thomas, even if this is real, even if what I'm feeling is real, you're from another time, another 100 years. How could this possibly work? His thumb traced along her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't known had fallen. I don't have all the answers, Sarah. I only know that I've spent nearly 200 years waiting for you. And now that I've found you, I can't bear the thought of losing you. But the music box, if I close it, will you disappear again? I don't know, he admitted, his honesty both scary and comforting. But I know I don't want to find out, not yet, not when we've just found each other. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to think through everything that had happened in less than an hour. When she opened them again, Thomas was still there, still real, still looking at her as if she was the answer to every wish had never dared to say out loud. Dance with me, she said suddenly, the words coming from somewhere deeper than thought. Thomas's smile was shining. Here now, to your music. He bowed properly, a move from his time that somehow didn't feel old, and held out his hand. It would be my honor. As they started to move together, the music box's tune seemed to grow, filling the whole attic with its strange beauty. Sarah had never thought of herself as a dancer, but with Thomas leading her, she felt graceful, light, as if the music itself was carrying them. I used to dream about this, she confessed as they moved together. Dancing with someone who made me feel like I was floating, and I used to dream about holding someone who understood that dancing isn't about the steps, it's about two hearts learning to beat together. They danced until the tune started to slow, and as the music box wound down, Sarah felt a known fear rising in her chest, but Thomas just pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. Whatever happens, he whispered, this moment is ours. No one can take it away from us. The music stopped, but Thomas stayed solid and real in her arms. They both breathed out in relief. So what do we do now? Sarah asked. Now, Thomas said, his eyes sparkling with something that looked a lot like fun. I think you should show me this time of yours. I have a feeling I have a lot to learn. Sarah laughed, the sound bright and free. Thomas, you have no idea. Then teach me, he said, simply teach me about your world and let me show you mine. Let's find out what love looks like when it goes beyond time itself. As they stood there in the dusty attic, surrounded by forgotten memories and impossible magic, Sarah realized that some doors weren't meant to stay closed forever. Some doors were meant to be opened by just the right person at just the right time. She had turned the music box without thinking, and everything had changed, but maybe she thought as Thomas's arms tightened around her, everything was supposed to change. Maybe she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. This person, this love that felt both totally new and deeply known. There's just one thing, Thomas said suddenly, his face getting serious. What I may be from 1847, but I'm pretty sure that in any time when a man finds the woman he's been waiting his whole life for, there are certain old ways to expect. Sarah's heart started to race, such as asking her properly if she'd be willing to take a chance on a love story that goes against every smart reason. And if she says yes, then, Thomas said, his voice soft, but sure, we write the most beautiful ending that two hearts have ever made together. Sarah looked into his eyes that held many years of wanting, years of hope, and an endless ability for the kind of love she'd always thought was too good to be real. She thought about her safe, everyday life downstairs, and then about the amazing man standing before her, offering her a love story that would make every fairy tale seem normal by comparison. The choice, when it came down to it, wasn't really a choice at all. Yes, she whispered yes to all of it. Thomas's smile was brighter than every big light in every ballroom had ever known, and as he pulled her into his arms and spun her around the dusty attic, Sarah realized that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from taking chances on tunes you've never heard before. Sometimes you have to turn the unknown without thinking and trust that everything will change just the way it's meant to. The music box sat quietly on its table, its job finally done, its magic let out into the world in the form of two hearts that had found their perfect match across the impossible space of time itself. And in the gentle afternoon light coming through the attic window, Thomas and Sarah started making the first notes of their own love song, one that would play not for hundreds of years in a music box, but for a lifetime in their hearts.